retaining them?
I won't get into negative stuff about anything regarding our coaching staff, any of them. The main thing is that we do feel like we need a new direction, and we're going to go out, seek the best coach that we can get for this organization, and take us in that direction. I have said on record, and I believe in this, Keith did a good job of getting our players to play right to the end. We had a good locker room. He did some good things for us.
Keith, what would be some of the hallmarks of the new direction? Without talking about Keith, where are you headed?
And what we want to do is do as much as we possibly can to keep this organization and our players on track and build a little bit from what we have, and then improve our defense. And that doesn't speak to the fact that I have to go get a defensive guru, but we want some improvement in all areas, and we want this thing to go in a direction where our fan base is finally rewarded with winning. That's what everybody is all about, and that's the main thing that we're going to do, is try to get to the next person who can take us into the next level, being the playoffs, to be quite candid.
Is it fair to characterize this as something that happens in any number of businesses where someone new comes in and wants his own person in there?
There's some of that. I think denying that would be the wrong thing. There's some of that. There are a lot of factors that went into it. But you do see this with sports teams as well as in other areas of business. And so it's somewhat of a factor, yes.
Would it have taken a monumental effort for Keith to stick around?
That's speculation. I think we'll deal with the fact that we are where we are right now. I wouldn't want to speculate on what could have happened or what might have been done differently or something like that. And we're dealing with the facts as they are today, and we go from there.
There's been some successful younger coaches who haven't had head coaching experience, especially in the playoffs right now. Would that be a model that you think you're going to look at pretty hard?
It could be. That very well could be. The door's open to a lot of things. I think we've stated already, we're not going to put out a list, and we're not going to be talking a great deal about this, and that there's no time frame. But the door's open to consider a lot of different possibilities.
It wouldn't just be an experienced coaches then?
Not necessarily. It could be anyone who we have the confidence in to take us to that next level.
What would give you confidence in the next coach?
We will end up having to do a good bit of soul searching, so to speak, regarding the interview process and that kind of thing. We obviously have some ideas as to what we'd like to see, but we're going to keep those among ourselves at this time. And I do think that the record of an individual always plays into it some, but that's not necessarily the only thing. There are people who deserve a break and who are ready for it. We'll be looking at those kinds of things. We'll be looking at the overall picture.
Have you started contacting anybody yet?
No. It would. I just don't think it would be the right thing if we had headed off in that direction. Now, my phone has been ringing off the wall since just a couple hours ago, as you can imagine. But we will make some contacts, of course, and it'll be done soon, but there's no time frame, and it's hard to say. We're not under the gun here to do something as far as time is concerned. Our effort is to get the best candidate that we can get and get him into our head coaching position and move forward.
How did Keith take it?
Keith was extremely professional, as you would expect. And he had a good grasp of the situation, but his professionalism was off the charts. His personality, of course, is that of a good man, and he was just absolutely outstanding. And I'm sure, well, he did appreciate the opportunity to coach for a full season. He did mention at one time that he had been thrust into the head coaching chair for a game or two here and there and those kind of things, and having had the opportunity to go a full season was something that he did appreciate. Now, we know there's some limitations on that, and he didn't go into great detail. We know the history. He came in late, right before training camp was to open, and so we know it's a difficult situation. He handled it well.
When did you was he informed?
This morning. Yes, we did that this morning.
Will you wait to the playoffs and go to, some teams that are eliminated you might be interested in to make contact?
No, not necessarily wait till the playoffs are over or until teams are eliminated. I assume that's where you're going. Not necessarily. There'll be some things that will start here pretty soon.
Maybe some of those guys available might be pretty expensive. Is there a budget on this, or can you go top dollar or something?
There isn't a budget on it. We have ownership that's willing to spend for quality, but to discuss numbers and that kind of thing, no, we wouldn't get into that. But it's not that it isn't a concern. It'll be a fair price, whatever we do. But at the same time, it's not something where I'm terrified that we can't afford this guy or that guy.
Did any players share anything with you about the decision?
No, we obviously did what we could to inform them right away, and but I've had no negative responses, and I've had nobody really say much of anything. I think the courtesy of informing them was what was important where that's concerned.
You have to fly to Memphis and prove
We let that go. No, I didn't.
I'm sure you're sympathetic to a guy who could say, I came in this uncertain situation, improved the team by 10 wins, and I didn't get to keep my job. I mean, that's kind of tough for him, isn't it?
It is, and that's our business, and it doesn't make it easier. But our business is such that these things happen, and it never makes them easier. And then it's particularly more difficult when you've got a quality guy. I've worked with Keith on the bench for a couple years, and I've enjoyed the association that I've had with him, and that's what makes these kind of things difficult.
Maybe we'll talk about defensive line. You didn't say that as a first, but you mentioned that. Is it going to be a guy that is going to lay out an entire defensive scheme before you are decide? What does that mean?
Well, here's what I mean. Our defense has to improve. And it's not that we have that as the model for the coach. But there's some responsibility, of course, on my part to go get some guys who do a better job defensively, and I recognize that immediately. So one way or another, our defense has to get better. Sometimes you get into these situations and you think, well, let's go just get a defensive coach. No, we're not going to go to that only. We want to look at the total package.
Do you get the sense that it'll be a step back, it'll be a third coach in 3 years, and you have to do the start-over process?
Not necessarily. What we would like to see is some stability now once we make the next selection. And I think everybody looks at situations and would assess it as though if you get the right guy and you keep him there for a few years, things flow a lot better and you have a lot better opportunity. It's difficult to keep coaches for a long time in this business. There are a few, but we know that for the most part, there's quite a bit of change in our business. We would like to get the right guy and get stability.
So that, that initial, whatever, adjustment period you'll have to have with a new coach, that isn't that big of a concern for you?
I'm not overly concerned about it. There will be some adjustment to a new coach, and that has to happen. So it's one of those things that just has to take place.
Where would you imagine Joe would be in on almost every interview?
At some point, certainly. And I think that's appropriate, particularly in our situation, and I think it's done quite often in other situations as well, but certainly.
Larry, when you and the staff analyze your basketball roster, do you see a team that should be in the playoffs?
I think that next year we should be in the playoffs. I tell you, there was a time at which it looked like there was a glimmer of hope for the playoffs. We had done pretty well right before the All-Star break, and we had that 7-game road trip coming, and if we could have gone out and knocked everybody down, so to speak, or gone 5-2, something like that, might have changed the complexion of things. The way things went and the way Memphis played at the end of the year, I don't think this team was capable of catching them.
But even if you had done that, even if you had made the playoffs, when you look at your roster, do you see a playoff roster?
Not right now. We're going to improve it. It will be a playoff roster.
What ways will you improve it?
We have to get better defensively, and we also have to get a little better size. That's going to be important to us. And our team needs a little more depth. We need to get better in our starting lineup. We need to add a guy to the bench. We'll get to add a guy in the draft that can make the team, but unless we get a change in the draft order through the lottery system, we probably will not get a guy who makes a big impact on this team, particularly early in the season.
How much input will a new coach have on personnel?
Some, but primarily that's a basketball operations decision. We'll go back to one thing, however, Monty. It would run counter to what you want to do to go select somebody in the draft or to sign a free agent that your head coach doesn't embrace. That's suicidal. So having a new head coach will become a factor in that.
Are you of the mind that the players you get or how you adjust the roster is going to be a bigger difference than what you bring in?
I would hope both of them would contribute. And to say which one is bigger, it's hard to say that, really. We want a better roster, and then we want the coach to be able to work with that roster.
You feel like whoever you get bring in will have to have some kind of relationship or trust with how they handle Stephen Curry? Will that be a big factor?
I think our players will accept a new situation. I think they're motivated on wanting to win and take the next step. And so I'm not anticipating that there's going to be any kind of difficulties with bringing in a new coach. I really feel that this bunch wants to win, and they would like to get it done the right way. They'd like to get off on the right foot next year and have a good training camp. And so whenever that day comes, we'll be ready for it. And I'm not really expecting problems with regards to that.
What happens if the top two candidates you like say, I can't play better defense for Steph Curry and Monte Ellis as my guards?
We'll have a decision to make. Yeah. And we'll just take that as it comes. And it's, somebody may say that. Somebody might say that.
Do you think it's important to, or does it matter at all to get a coach in by the draft? I mean,
Again, we're not going to put a time frame on it. And so I'm not under the gun to have somebody by draft day. If you have a coach in place on draft day, it's helpful. But I think I've downplayed the draft just a little bit in terms of how much it's going to impact the immediate future. It's going to impact the overall future. So that's not something that I'd put a time frame on. If we have a coach, that's good. If we don't, we can survive it. It isn't. It is not. So.
You have said in the past that you like the style of offensive play your team has. Today you're talking about defense, and we understand where that fits into a playoff team.
Yeah.
Does this mean that you're willing to go another direction offensively?
Basically slow down a little bit.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Is there too much association between what Keith was doing and what Don was doing before?
Not necessarily. We do like the up-tempo game. That is true, because the team is geared that way. Now, if we change that roster, as well as change a coach, then that the tempo might change a little bit. In general, and I only say this in general, we like a fast-paced game. We like the up-tempo game. But somehow we'll go back to the fact we've got to get our defense better. And that may necessitate that the game is a little bit slower. But we've got some guys who run effectively, and we don't want to take that away from them.
Are you looking to get a center one way or another?
It would help us. Yeah, it would certainly help us. And it's something that we've got to take a deep look at and really work that issue as hard as we possibly can. It's hard to say what we'll be able to come up with, but we need some help around the basket, some form or another.
What about